Imagine walking through a bustling city built into the side of a cliff, with 800 rooms stacked like a stone honeycomb. Or picture warriors carrying glowing embers sealed inside buffalo horns as they follow massive herds across endless grasslands. These aren't fantasy stories. This was America, thousands of years before Europeans ever arrived. Today I'm taking you inside the lost world of the first Americans. The Great Awakening. Let me tell you an ancient story. According to Lakota legend, the very first human being woke up one morning with his face turned toward the sun, slowly emerging from the soft, muddy earth. At first, only his head was visible, the rest of his body still forming in the soil. He looked around and saw no mountains, no rivers, no forests, just endless, quaking mud, because the earth itself was still young. Slowly, he pulled himself free from the clinging earth. His first steps were uncertain on the soft ground, but as the sun's rays hardened the surface beneath his feet, he began to run and leap with pure joy. From this first man, the Dakota Nation was born. Whether you believe this legend or not, one thing is certain. The ancestors of Native Americans had been living on this continent for over 15,000 years before Columbus got lost looking for India. By 1492, millions of people called this land home, speaking over 300 different languages and living in ways so diverse that neighboring tribes might be as different from each other as Vikings were from ancient Egyptians. The seed that changed everything. Deep in the highlands of ancient Mexico, around 7,000 years ago, someone made a discovery that would feed civilizations. They found a wild grass with seeds so tiny you could barely see them. But instead of just eating what nature provided, they had a revolutionary idea. Generation after generation, they carefully selected plants with the biggest seeds, nurturing them, protecting them, watching them grow. What started as a grass with seeds smaller than rice grains slowly transformed into something incredible. Corn with kernels you could actually sink your teeth into. They didn't stop there. They coaxed beans to climb higher, squash to grow fatter, peppers to burn hotter. While much of the world was still wandering in search of food, these agricultural pioneers were already growing enough to feed permanent cities. Cities in the clouds. Now picture this. You're standing at the bottom of a towering cliff in what we now call Colorado. You look up, and carved into the rock face hundreds of feet above you, you see windows, doorways, and terraces, an entire city built into the cliff itself. This wasn't some desperate hiding place. These were the homes of master architects who chose to live in the sky. Some of these cliff cities contained 800 rooms, stacked and connected like a massive stone apartment complex. Families climbed ladders from level to level. Children played on terraces overlooking valleys far below. But here's what really amazes me. Step out into the desert around these cliff cities, and you'll find something incredible. Canals. Miles and miles of carefully engineered waterways that brought life to a landscape that should have been barren. These people turned 250,000 acres of harsh desert into productive farmland using nothing but human ingenuity and backbreaking labor. They woke up each morning in their cliffside homes, climbed down to 10 gardens that bloomed in the desert, and returned each evening to one of the most spectacular addresses in North America. The Longhouse Nation. 3,000 miles away, in the thick forests of what we now call New York, imagine walking into a building that's longer than a football field. You step through the doorway and find yourself in a central hallway with smoke drifting up toward the ceiling. On either side of you, families are going about their daily lives, cooking, working, talking. This is a longhouse, and it's home to 20 families at once. Each family has their own apartment space on either side of the central corridor, but they share the fires that burn down the middle. The smoke from these fires drifts up through openings in the barrel-shaped roof made of elm bark. The people who built these longhouses called themselves the people of the Longhouse. We know them as the Iroquois, and they created something remarkable, a democratic confederation where decisions were made by councils, where women chose the leaders, and where 5 separate nations came together as one. But don't mistake their sophisticated politics for softness. These were warriors who struck fear into the hearts of enemies hundreds of miles away. Boys were raised from childhood to face pain and death without flinching, because courage in battle was the fastest way to earn respect and honor. Following the thunder. Out on the Great Plains, imagine hearing a sound like distant thunder that goes on for hours. You climb to the top of a hill and see the source, a herd of buffalo stretching to the horizon, tens of thousands of massive, shaggy animals moving like a brown river across the grassland. Now imagine your entire life revolving around that herd. When they move, you move. When they stop, you stop. This was life for the Plains peoples, and they had perfected it to an art form. In the morning, you wake up in a teepee made from buffalo hides stretched over wooden poles. Your clothes are buffalo leather. Your food is buffalo meat. Even your bowls and tools come from buffalo bone and horn. Need to move camp? 20 families can take down their entire village, pack everything they own, and be ready to travel in under 2 hours. And here's something that would amaze any modern camper. They carried fire from camp to camp. A glowing ember would be sealed inside a buffalo horn filled with rotted wood, where it would smolder for days without going out. When they reached their new campsite, that ember would bring warmth and light from the old home to the new. They called themselves Dakota, which means allies. But other tribes had a different name for them, Sioux, meaning enemies. Both names told the truth. When the salmon run, picture the most abundant fishing you've ever seen, then multiply it by 1,000. Every spring, the rivers of the Pacific Northwest would turn silver with millions of salmon fighting their way upstream to spawn. The water would be so thick with fish that you could almost walk across their backs. The coastal peoples had learned to time their entire year around this incredible abundance. In just a few months of intense work during salmon season, they could catch and preserve enough fish to feed their families for the entire year. But this abundance gave them something even more valuable than food: time. Time to become master craftsmen. Time to carve towering totem poles that told the stories of their ancestors. Time to build massive wooden houses from giant cedar trees. Time to hold elaborate ceremonies called potlatches where wealthy chiefs would give away everything they owned just to show how prosperous they were. Imagine being invited to a potlatch where the host gives away hundreds of blankets, dozens of canoes, and enough food to feed a village, all just to demonstrate his wealth and gain respect. And if you received these gifts, you'd be honor-bound to throw an even bigger potlatch in return, or your entire family would be disgraced. So when someone talks about discovering America, remember these stories. Remember the cliff cities and the longhouses. Remember the buffalo hunters who carried fire and horns, and the salmon fishers who carved their histories in towering poles. Columbus didn't discover a wilderness waiting for civilization. He stumbled onto a continent that was already home to millions of people living in societies as complex and sophisticated as any in the world. The man who emerged from the earth in that ancient Dakota legend wasn't primitive or lost. He was the ancestor of engineers who irrigated deserts, warriors who built confederations, and artists who turned tree trunks into towering masterpieces. These are just a few of the incredible civilizations that thrived in America long before European contact. Each tribe, each nation had their own unique stories, innovations, and ways of life that we're only beginning to fully understand and appreciate. If you found these stories as fascinating as I did, give this video a like and subscribe for more incredible stories from American history. There are so many more untold chapters waiting to be explored.